Hi, you are listening to Stay a While Podcast. I'm your host, Tommi Vincent. Today's episode, Stay a While Draft Edition, was recorded live at the Power Players Awards and Mastery Reception at VU Studio in Las Vegas, Nevada. Powered by Power Hands and Vanguard Holdings Group. Let's get right into our conversation. I have joining me at the Stay a While table, David Robertson. So David, you are here and you are a trainer, and you specialize in training athletes that are skilled as wide receivers. Now that is a very detailed position.
Yeah.
So let's talk from that perspective. Let's talk about what you do and how you instill in the athletes that you work with the importance of details.
Yeah. So I work with receivers a lot in the off season on their hand-eye coordination, the muscle memory when it comes to breaking down certain steps when it takes to get out of certain routes, specialize and focus on the top end of their routes, being explosive coming out of their breaks. And the things that I do to help them is I put together a lot of different drills that I know that those guys are weak at or that are predicated towards their game that they need, and we just instill that muscle memory in them. So if I see that they're weak, I'm breaking off their right foot or breaking off their left foot. We'll do a lot of drills to where they're strengthening that muscle memory up in that particular area.
What happens when they don't focus on the details of the work?
Yeah, when they don't focus on the detail of the work, it could cause you being a second late out of your route, and the quarterback's throwing an interception. That can be a difference between you catching a 6 or 7 yard route and taking in 70 yards for a touchdown, opposed to catching a 6 or 7 yard route and getting tackled. Just the little details about your footwork, your foot placement when you're coming out of certain routes. So those things are really crucial on being an elite receiver in the NFL.
For you, how did you become so focused in the work that you're doing? Like, it's very specific. How did you get to the place where you said, this is it, this is what I know that I am supposed to be doing?
Well, yeah, I have a receiver background. I was an all-state, all-American receiver in high school. I played at the University of Oklahoma, played wide receiver there. So when I got done playing receiver, my mom always told me that, I was always a workout junkie, coming up. So she was like, when you're done playing football, you need to coach, and as your mom, you don't want to listen to her, because you want to continue to live out your dreams of playing football. And so that's what pushed me to start training receivers, was really her.
Okay.
Yeah, she told me that, that's what I need to start doing. And I started helping out at my old school that I went to, at Kimball High School. And I found my niche for it, man. And I don't even feel like I'm working when I'm doing it now. It's like a passion. Yeah. So it's neat. It's really cool.
And that's important because you allowed for the passion to grow and to develop.
Yeah.
And in this process, when you're working with the athletes that you're working with, has to be a level of passion in doing what you do, or you'll go out there and you won't give it everything you got.
Right.
So you have to maintain a level of passion even in the act of doing the work, because you got to keep them in what they're doing. How do you go out every day, hour on hour, and maintain that level of passion for them to keep them excited about the training that they're doing?
Well, I read a lot of articles about my guys that I'm training. I watch a lot of NFL Network, NFL Live, ESPN. So I like to take little tidbits of what commentators may say about a particular receiver that I'm training, and shoot them a text or something and let them know, like, hey, this is what they're saying about you. This is if you play for the Jets or if he plays for the Chiefs, these are things that they're saying about you. Like, look what the media is saying. They're saying that they don't know that he's going to be a successor. They don't think he's going to be the next guy to step up and be to be the star receiver. So when I come to the session, I'll kind of hint around those little remarks that the commentator says to kind of tick them off a little bit in their mind psychologically to get them going, you know. So I do that a lot with my guys, and they love it, you know what I mean? Because I talk noise to them, get up under their skin, you know, and it helps them a lot, you know, because when they're in training camp, it's them against the world, like, you know, so that's a mentality that you have to have.
I can appreciate I can appreciate that. You playing some mind games, though.
Mind games, yeah.
So, okay, so this is the big day, and we're celebrating David. What is on the celebration menu for David? What are we eating?
Steak. I like steak. Some macaroni and cheese. Some asparagus. Some grilled asparagus, and some mashed potatoes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we eat.
I love it. I love it. Well, I thank you so much for coming and taking your seat at the Stay a While table, and I wish you tremendous success as you continue to build men.
Man, I appreciate you. Appreciate you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So joining me at the table, I have Ken Alexander. And I am so grateful to have a conversation with you here at Power Players. And Danielle has told me that you are a power player.
I appreciate that.
So can you share with everybody who you are, and from your perspective, what is a power player?
Okay. Well, I would sum up who I am very simply. I'm a legacy builder. And legacy, I guess I said very simply, but legacy needs to be defined. Legacy is not just about your own flesh and blood, your own genetics. It's about all those that you touch and connect. And we're all one source, so we all connect, we all touch, right? So if the world isn't better when you leave, then what did you really do, right? And to whatever gifts we're given, what ability that we have to communicate or infect so that we can affect people's life, infect them with information, opportunity so that we can affect their lives, right? Which leads to another. My oldest son is here tonight, and he would tell you, I always tell him that if I leave you at 5, then you should leave, because there's a huge gap between the younger ones and him.
Okay.
You should leave them at 10, and all your friends that are with you should at least be somewhere in the mix, and then they should leave theirs at 15. If each generation starts over at 0, then how will we ever progress, right? And I think legacy building is also about providing freedom. When I say freedom, I mean the ability to think. So many of us work to live, that we don't get an opportunity to actually create. I would say we're probably 20, maybe 20 years behind in what the populist creation could be if everyone had the opportunity. The powers that be may say that if people didn't work, then if everyone had what they needed, no one would work, there'd be no motivation. I differ. I believe if people had freedom, maybe that would transpire for a moment. But what happens when you're on vacation? I don't know if you've been on a 2 or 3 week vacation, but after day 4, day 5, you kind of like, ooh, my phone, what do I, and then you start thinking. It's human nature to think and create. So that's it. Legacy building, provide opportunity, give true freedom, and let's see what we can create as a one unit, as the human race.
What you said, it reminded me of one of the interviews that I did with Dr. Bernice King. And she talked about, now people talk about legacy building, and they talk about it from the place of starting from, I'm building my legacy. And what you talked about was what she said, in that she doesn't believe she's building her own legacy. She believes she's building upon the legacy of her father, Dr. King, and her mother, Coretta Scott King. And so when you're talking about your son and the gap with your other child, and in there you're like, okay, no one's starting at 0 because we've already built something. And so we're going to continue to build that. That messaging, it contradicts a lot of what is being poured into society right now. It's a very all about me perspective, where everything is about what can you do for you? Now, I'm a firm believer in making sure that you take care of yourself and that you build yourself, and that you're able to pour out of a place of abundance that you already sit in, so you don't become empty in the process. So I'm with that.
Right.
But I recognize how important it is for us to do exactly what you're talking about. Thinking about it from the place of, it's about what we're passing along, the steps that we're building to give people an opportunity to continue to climb, so we're all getting just a little higher and a little higher. What do you think about some of the information gap, I'm going to say it that way, where it seems like there's a breakdown in some of the wisdom that really allowed us to be where we are today, but it's not necessarily being considered in the process of how people are moving through the earth right now?
Well, I think it still goes, you could take that back to gratitude, because if you stay in a place of gratitude, then you're always looking for the opportunity to tell someone thank you or share. It keeps you in the open mindset. And the way things are moving now, if you're in that way, you're always going to have something to say or contribute to the conversation. And no one wants to be on the island by themselves, right? So, I mean, if everyone were sharing or were in gratitude, then the information would be passed around and that gap would be far less. And that would actually change, I believe, the direction. I think that might heal some situations. Yeah.
So this space that we're in today, the environment was meticulously curated to really be a place of empowerment, of self-empowerment, because it's understanding who you are as a person, understanding that you have gifts, understanding that you have the ability to innovate and create assets and to move throughout whatever space you're in. And Danielle has established this as the power players, right? How would you define a power player?
Very similar to what I said initially. A power player would be someone who is considered of legacy, who does not steal from their legacy.
What does that mean? Break that down
we
a
steal
little
from
bit.
our legacy every day. Because we can afford something doesn't mean that we should get it or acquire it, obtain it, right? If it's not building assets, if it's not building or providing something for later or giving us an opportunity to heighten the platform or broaden the platform, then why are we doing it right then? I can't remember his name, but someone told me once, he was like, well, I wouldn't buy a car unless I could buy 3 of them, as far as cash, you know. I was like, okay. But he was saying that from, the point of, just fun. Like some of these cars out here that we have, they're assets. They appreciate about 14 to 15% a year, whether you drive it or not. And they're customized. Some are just one of one, things like that. So even in that respect, what can I do with the resource that I have? And if that resource is just to suffice your ego and make you feel better versus you doing something that makes you feel better, like being productive and growing people and opportunities, then you're stealing from your legacy. Because that could have been, let's say, money. That could have been capital that's growing at 36% a year, so that my other legacy seeds. Or I'll share this. We give scholarships, but not in the way that most people think. So there's a young lady in Texas who she had some federal grant and some different funding. She was in the top of her class. She speaks Korean, African-American young lady. She's outstanding. So she's gonna get the money to go, but what her family doesn't have is transportation. Single mother household, 3 kids. So the scholarship was, here's a vehicle with insurance paid, tax, registration, all that stuff paid. And you can't work. You have to learn how to trade. So you can pick up your phone and learn how to trade. And we have a licensed individual to teach her these things so that you can, because this is her senior year, by the time you get to university, you don't have to worry about a fast food job. Nothing's wrong with that. But if we can do other things, why don't we? Right? If we can spend 15 hours a week, why can't we spend 15 hours a week learning this to where I can pick it up, and in two mornings I pocket $400, which would take a typical, week's worth of time, at a fast food restaurant after taxes, right? So the scholarship part is, here's a vehicle paid for. You don't have to do anything but maintain these. She has to read certain books and give book reports on that, and it's not just the one page. She has to talk about how it affects her life and what she's drawn from it and how she's going to use that to further or affect others, right? So we could have done a lot of other things with those resources.
Yeah.
So doing that, and part of the end result, because we're building legacy, right, is once she gets to a certain point, she has to teach 3 others what she's learned. So it'll self-perpetuate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is this scholarship that you're speaking about, is this something that anyone can apply to?
It will be.
Okay.
We were testing it out, finding parameters. We have some foundations we've been working with, because they have the platform to proliferate it across, multiple channels, more channels than we could.
Okay.
And then establishing some boards, because different regions have different challenges, and we want to make sure we meet those challenges, not just our idea, because we're not there. We don't know.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing what you shared about legacy. I think that is takeaway. People can hear this conversation, and it's information that that's empowering, and it gives them a perspective that will allow for them to grow. So I appreciate that, and I thank you so much for joining me at the Stay a While table.
Thank you. Appreciate it.